Good morning, dear Excellencies, dear friends. Thank you for being here. Thank you, the EU and the UN, for hosting this conference, which is an extremely important message that the world still cares about Syria, still cares about the tragedy that is unfolding every day there, and still cares about hundreds of thousands, millions of people who have been displaced, pushed out of their house, killed in 7 years of a conflict whose continuity is a sign that we have all collectively failed in bringing about a political solution to this conflict. It is important that we are here, but what's more important is that we act. And we need to act on two fronts. One, on a political solution to the conflict. Everyone around the table here agrees that there's no military answer to this conflict. That more war is only going to mean more killing, more suffering, more destruction, and more displacement of people. So if we all agree that there is no military solution, our focus should be on a political solution. And we all also know the path to that political solution. There is an ongoing political process in Geneva that our dear friend Stefan de Mistura has been working on for years, that has all of us participating there, and that is the only path to that solution. And that solution should be based on Security Council Resolution 2254. It should be a solution that first and foremost acceptable to the Syrian people. It should preserve the integrity of Syria, the independence of Syria, and the sovereignty of Syria. What we need to do is to reinvigorate that path, because the reality is, even though probably there is less fighting in the whole territory of Syria now, the situation has never been worse in terms of having very little horizons to move forward for a solution. And if we all know that there is a political solution only to the crisis, then now is the time for all of us to get together behind a plan, behind Geneva process, and move towards that solution. If we do not do that, then we'll only be managing a crisis. And the management of that crisis is going to continue at the expense of people, at the expense of kids like Farah, who are going to be deprived not only of their reality, but of their future as well. So we need to act. The Syrian crisis should not become a refugee issue, that we come here every year and try and find ways and means of supporting people to sustain their lives. Our priority should be finding a political solution. Then there is the refugee issues. And I think we're all touched by the story and by the words that Farah made today. But there are hundreds of thousands of people like Farah. Those need support, and we should not feel great about, supporting Farah. That's a duty, and that's an investment in our own collective security. If the Syrian crisis has shown anything, it has shown that if problem starts in the Middle East, it will reverberate in Europe and elsewhere. We've seen how Europe reacted to hundreds of thousands of refugees when they crossed the oceans and tried to cross into its shores. But we live as a neighboring country, as Lebanon, as Turkey, as Jordan, we live with that crisis day by day. So we cannot continue to approach it from a crisis management perspective. We need to invest in refugees, because investing in them is investing in our collective security. If we provide Farah and kids like her with education, with a chance at life, then we'll be building the future army who will hopefully rebuild their country when the crisis stops and when the guns fall silent. If we do not, if we abandon them to ignorance, to despair, to bitterness, then there will be the new army from which what's worse than ISIS is going to be recruiting 10 years or 15 years from now. So that is our focus. We all talk about ISIS. We all agree that ISIS is a collective enemy that does not belong to any religion, to any faith, to any race. They are outside our shared humanity. They are thugs. They are outlaws. But we all know that we've defeated ISIS in Syria. They've lost their territorial control. But as His Majesty keeps saying, ISIS has been destroyed, has been defeated, but it has not been destroyed. We need to destroy Daesh. And to destroy Daesh, we need to dismantle the environments of despair and anger and chaos in which radicalism thrives. That means we need to find a political solution to Syria, and that means we need to address the root causes of conflict across the region. This conflict is about Syria and the region, and protecting Syria and the region means having a holistic approach to all the problems that it is facing. So we need to be able to continue to support refugees, not as a favor, not as something that we'd all feel good about, but as something as a duty towards our future, towards our collective security. My country, Jordan, is host to 1.3 million Syrians. And we're no stranger to hosting refugees. We're the largest per capita host of refugees anywhere in the world. And Jordanians are happily sharing their foods and schools and streets and jobs with their Syrian neighbors and friends. But the pressure is mounting. Our unemployment in Jordan right now is about 18%, and yet we've given work permits to about 100,000 Syrians over the last year. That is double the number of jobs that our economy is able to create on an annual basis. We are managing a huge deficit problem. We are implementing huge economic reforms, which means we're not being able to invest in infrastructure the way that we should, and yet we've admitted 130,000 and more students into our schools. That means some of our schools are operating in 2 shifts now. Some of them are even 3 shifts. Our medical system, our health infrastructure is being overburdened as well. And again, we're happily investing in that because the reality is that they are in the room. If Farah was born in Jordan, she would be 8 years now, which means when she came to Jordan, she was a toddler. Now she's at 1st grade or 2nd grade. So this is the kind of pressure upon which we find ourselves having to deal day in, day out, and yet we will never shun our responsibility in doing our duty towards our guests, because that is, again, something that we believe we have to do towards as a humanitarian responsibility, but also as an investment in our collective security. As I said, we're extremely grateful for the support that the international community has shown. We're extremely grateful for the EU for the work that has been done in Jordan, for the UN, and for the great partnership that we've had with you, sir, in trying to meet the needs of Syrian refugees. But I have to say it is not enough. Our ability, our capacity has been pushed to a limit. We need to have more support if we are able to continue to deliver our responsibility towards Syrian refugees and towards this crisis. Ultimately, again, the crisis is a political crisis. We need to find a solution. We need to mitigate against donor fatigue, because we see that is happening. The World Food Programme, I think next month, is going to stop providing subsidies to over 500,000 Syrians in Jordan. That means those people will lose a significant amount of the income that they used to depend on to be able to meet their needs. Other UN agencies are suffering under pressure. So what we need to do is to act and act quickly to make sure that this gap is bridged and that we're able to continue to provide the significant support that those people need. But then again, I think most importantly now we need to focus on the political process. We need to go back to the table. All of us get together, genuinely trying to find a solution to stop doubling down on positions that we all know have not worked, because we've been at it more than for 7 years now, and we've not been able to deliver a solution. And I think that is an important question to put to all of ourselves. Why have we failed? And what is the price of failure? We've failed because we've not, I think, been able to accept that this is a conflict, the reality of which has changed over the last few years, and we need to come to it with new vigor, new determination, and new ideas. Again, the bottom line is finding a solution that the Syrian people accept. And we need to accept that the failure of this crisis is going to come back and haunt. The failure to solve this crisis will come back and haunt us again. Daesh, again, will regenerate, will recreate itself on the ashes of that failure, on the despair, on the anger, on the bitterness that continue to exist in Syria. So I think for me, it's a very, very simple question that we have to answer today. Do we want to solve this problem? And I know the answer is yes. And I think what we need to do now is to agree on how to do it and go back to Geneva and speak to the Mistura and see how we can work together. And do we want to continue to support Syrian refugees? And I think the answer is yes, and that means we need to pledge. We need to be able to meet the response plans. We have a 2.4 billion response plan that we need to be able to have fulfilled in Jordan in order to be able to continue to give schools and to give health services to Syrian people. And I have to say that we do want to come to a situation in Jordan where we have to make a choice between giving the last available seat in a classroom to a Jordanian child or to a Syrian child. Because if we get there that will be the crisis. That will be the ultimate test to our failure, and that's going to be a failure that will haunt all of us. Thank you so much.